I wasn't looking for anything complicated. At this stage in life, you know what you want: honesty, warmth, someone whose presence doesn't drain you. I had gone through enough years, enough lessons, to think I could spot the difference between real connection and fantasy. So when I met her, I approached things carefully. She told me she was in an open marriage, not ideal, but she was direct, articulate, emotionally aware. She said the romance was long gone with her husband, and that they'd agreed to live separate emotional lives. I didn't chase her. I listened, observed, and, to be honest, felt a flicker of something I hadn't in years, maybe hope. After our first night together, she told me she was done with her husband. She said being with me reminded her of who she was before everything went numb. I remember her eyes when she said it, intense, searching. She wasn't casual about this, or so it seemed. She said she wanted a new life with me? I didn't jump in head first, but I believed her. We started spending every evening together. She brought her things over little by little, until it just made sense for her to stay. She'd touch my hand and whisper, "It feels like home here." I thought I'd found someone who saw me, not as a fixer or placeholder, but as a man with depth, with value. I should have known better. But when someone looks at you like that, when the loneliness starts to lift, you want to believe it's real. There's a kind of silence that settles in when two lives begin to intertwine, not the loud, messy kind of passion you see in films, but a stillness that feels like peace. That's what it felt like with her, at first. The way she'd hum in the kitchen while making tea. The way her head would tilt onto my shoulder during a movie, like it had always belonged there. She folded herself into my life like she'd always been part of it. And I let her. I wanted to. She started rearranging things around the house, small things at first. A new blanket on the couch. Her books tucked between mine. Her toothbrush next to mine. I didn't mind. It felt like something mutual was forming, like we were building something together. We'd cook dinner together and talk about the future, not in grand, sweeping gestures, but in the soft, everyday kind of way that makes you think it might actually happen. She called me her safe place. I held on to that. I let her see the old scars, the ones from a younger man's mistakes, from disappointments I rarely talked about anymore. She listened, eyes full of that impossible empathy that makes you forget you're exposing something fragile. She told me she had been hurt too, that her husband had made her feel invisible for years. And I believed her, because I know what that kind of quiet erosion feels like. I gave her space, but I also gave her trust. Full, clean trust, the kind that only comes when you decide to stop guarding your heart with barbed wire. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't naive. But I was open. Open in a way I hadn't been in years. And that, I think now, was the beginning of the end. When the job training came up, I hesitated. It was an opportunity, not glamorous, but solid. Stability. A few weeks away. She encouraged me to take it. "We're strong," she said, wrapping her arms around my waist like she meant it. "This won't change anything." I remember the morning I left. She packed me a lunch, kissed me slow, and stood on the porch barefoot, waving as I drove off. I watched her in the rearview mirror until she disappeared behind the trees. That image stayed with me longer than it should have. The first few days she texted often, little things, a picture of the cat curled on my pillow, a line from a song we both liked, a "miss you already," right before bed. But gradually, her messages thinned out. When I called, she'd answer distractedly, like her attention was elsewhere. She said work had gotten hectic, that she was just tired. "Don't overthink it," she laughed. "You always do that." But something in me, maybe that old part I'd buried, began to stir. The tone of her voice shifted. It wasn't cruel, just distant. Muted. And late at night, in that quiet hotel room, I started to feel the creeping chill of uncertainty. One evening, she mentioned casually, "I saw him today. My ex." My chest tightened. She brushed it off. "He's not doing well," she said. "He's unraveling. I'm the only person he still talks to." She told me I had nothing to worry about, that it was just about compassion. That he'd even stopped by the house because he was falling apart and had no one else. I wanted to believe her. I told myself she was just being kind. But something about it didn't sit right. Not the words, the way she said them. Too smooth. Too rehearsed. And yet I said nothing. I told myself trust meant letting go. I told myself I had to be better than suspicion. But deep inside, something began to crack, not loudly, not visibly. Just a small, precise fracture in the foundation I'd built with my bare hands. When I came back, the house was spotless, almost too spotless, like it had been wiped clean of something. She greeted me with a bright smile, arms wide, the same softness in her voice. But I noticed little things. The sheets had been changed. A bottle of whiskey I never bought was half empty in the kitchen. The mirror in the hallway, the one I'd hung straight, was slightly askew. I asked her, gently, if he had been there again. Not accusing. Just wanting clarity. She rolled her eyes like I'd brought dirt into a clean room. He needed help. He's not well. You knew that, she said, voice sharp at the edges. Why are you acting like this? That phrase, why are you acting like this, would become a refrain. Whenever I questioned something that didn't sit right. Whenever I asked why his name kept surfacing. Why his jacket appeared on the hook by the door. Why her stories changed shape each time she told them. She turned it around every time. You have trust issues, she said once, her voice calm like a therapist diagnosing a patient. You project your fears onto me. It's not fair. And here's the cruel brilliance of it, she didn't shout. She didn't storm out. She wrapped her betrayal in silk, made me feel like I was the one breaking something precious. She said I needed to do the work, I needed to sit with my wounds. She even suggested therapy, not for us, but for me. You're so guarded, she whispered one night, tracing my face. Maybe that's why you struggled to feel safe. I sat there, staring at her, unable to find the edges of the truth anymore. She had flipped the lens so subtly, I began to wonder if I was, in fact, the problem. Maybe I was too damaged. Maybe I was holding on too tightly. And so, like a fool with open hands, I apologized. Not for something I had done, but for feeling. For noticing. For caring too much. I lay beside her that night, the warmth of her body next to mine, and felt more alone than I had in years. He didn't fall apart all at once. That would have been merciful. No, it unraveled thread by thread, like a sweater you don't notice is thinning until one day, you're standing in the cold. She began talking about him more openly, but only in carefully chosen tones. He's trying, she'd say. He's finally seeing a counselor. Or, he says he never stopped loving me. She'd say it with a shake of the head, like it annoyed her, but there was something almost nostalgic in her voice. I asked her, one night, if she was having doubts. Not accusing, just tired. Worn down. She looked at me for a long moment, not angry, not sad. Just unreadable. Then she said, You don't understand how trauma bonds people. Like that settled it. Like it was something I couldn't possibly grasp. From then on, the house wasn't home anymore. It was a stage. She moved through it with a grace that made it all feel performative, smiling at me over dinner while texting beneath the table, hugging me like she was clocking out of a role. I started to notice she wore perfume only on certain days. Her phone went silent at night, always flipped face down. But when I asked questions, she didn't fight. That would have been easier. No, she pitted me. You're spiraling again, she said once, while running a hand through my hair like a mother calming a restless child. You always go to the worst-case scenario. It's exhausting. She made me doubt myself so deeply that even my instincts began to feel like flaws. That's what betrayal in disguise does. It doesn't stab, it erodes. Slowly. Kindly. With soft hands. And I stayed. Not because I didn't see it, I did. But because I kept hoping I was wrong. Because I'd built too much of myself around the idea that this would be different. That this time, I wouldn't be the man left standing in the ruins. But the ruins were already forming. I just hadn't stepped back far enough to see them. He didn't fall apart all at once. That would have been merciful. No, it unraveled thread by thread, like a sweater you don't notice is thinning until one day you're standing in the cold. She began talking about him more openly, but only in carefully chosen tones. "He's trying," she'd say. "He's finally seeing a counselor." Or, "He says he never stopped loving me." She'd say it with a shake of the head, like it annoyed her, but there was something almost nostalgic in her voice. I asked her, one night, if she was having doubts. Not accusing, just tired. Worn down. She looked at me for a long moment, not angry, not sad. Just unreadable. Then she said, "You don't understand how trauma bonds people." Like that settled it. Like it was something I couldn't possibly grasp. From then on, the house wasn't home anymore. It was a stage. She moved through it with a grace that made it all feel performative, smiling at me over dinner while texting beneath the table, hugging me like she was clocking out of a role. I started to notice she wore perfume only on certain days. Her phone went silent at night, always flipped face down. But when I asked questions, she didn't fight. That would have been easier. "No," she pitted me. "You're spiraling again," she said once, while running a hand through my hair like a mother calming a restless child. "You always go to the worst-case scenario. It's exhausting." She made me doubt myself so deeply that even my instincts began to feel like flaws. That's what betrayal in disguise does. It doesn't stab, it erodes. Slowly. Kindly. With soft hands. And I stayed. Not because I didn't see it, I did. But because I kept hoping I was wrong. Because I'd built too much of myself around the idea that this would be different. That this time, I wouldn't be the man left standing in the ruins. But the ruins were already forming. I just hadn't stepped back far enough to see them. One morning, she was simply gone. Not in a dramatic, suitcase by the door kind of way. No storm. No fight. Just an absence so clean it felt surgical. A few drawers empty. Her mug missing from the rack. The air in the house different, not just quieter, but vacant, like something had been extracted from the walls. There was no note. No text. Not even the decency of ambiguity. Just silence. I called once. Twice. On the third try, the line clicked, then voicemail. I didn't call again. Days later, someone else told me the truth. Not her. Not even one of our mutual friends, a neighbor, actually. Said he'd seen her and the ex, now very much not an ex, unloading groceries together, laughing in a way I hadn't seen her laugh in months. Said he didn't want to get involved, but thought I should know. I nodded, thanked him, then walked back inside and sat on the edge of the bed where she used to sleep. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't even hurt in the way people expect. What I felt was a kind of numb awe. Like watching a magician reveal how every trick had been done right in front of me, and I had applauded. She hadn't just gone back to him. She'd rewritten the whole story. I started hearing things. How she said I'd been controlling? Cold. How I pressured her. How I'd isolated her emotionally. The people we both knew, people I had welcomed into my life through her, began to drift. A few unfollowed me online. One old friend of hers, who once told me she admired how I treated her, sent a single message. I didn't expect this from you. That's how betrayal metastasizes. Not just through lies, but through silence in rooms you're not allowed to enter. Through narratives reshaped when you're not there to defend yourself. And all the while, I was left to pace the same hallways we had once filled with laughter, wondering how much of it had ever been real. Wondering how a man could give his best, only to be used as a bridge back to the very thing she claimed had broken her. I didn't break anything. But I was the one left in pieces. In the weeks that followed, I stopped opening the curtains. Not out of melodrama, but because daylight started to feel dishonest. Too bright for the truth it couldn't reach. I moved through the house like a guest, quiet, careful, avoiding the corners where memories had congealed. Her laugh still echoed in places. Her scent clung to the fabric of the couch like a taunt. People say time heals. That's a lie we tell each other to avoid watching men bleed in slow motion. Time doesn't heal. It just moves forward, dragging you with it until the world stops asking if you're okay. One night, I stood in front of the mirror, really looking, not at the surface, but beneath it. I saw a man worn thin, yes, but also something else. A man who had loved without strategy. Who had risked his dignity for the hope of something honest. And in that reflection, I saw no shame. What she did was calculated. But what I gave was real. That matters. That has to matter. I began to write again, not poems or letters, just thoughts. Memories. Facts that had been twisted until I no longer recognized them. I wrote them down, so I wouldn't forget the truth of my own experience. That I had offered a home. That I had listened. That I had believed, not out of foolishness, but out of a quiet, relentless hope that love could still be something worth trusting. She had taken that trust and used it to fix the cracks in his story. I was never her destination. I was her detour. A place to rest. A man to lean on until the one she truly wanted was ready to hold her weight again. And yet, I did not collapse. I did not retaliate. I did not become the villain in the story she needed to tell. I simply stood there. Breathing. Hurt, yes. But still whole in places she had never even touched. Some wounds don't scream. They whisper. They settle into the bones, changing how you walk, how you carry weight. I don't think I'll ever go back to the man I was before her, and maybe that's the truest consequence of betrayal, not the heartbreak, but the quiet reshaping of the soul. I don't hate her. I want to, sometimes, in the quiet hours when the house creaks and memory returns uninvited. But hate would mean I still want something from her. I don't. Not her words, not her apology, not even the truth. Because I know it now. All of it. And I carry it without bitterness, like a scar I refuse to hide. What she did, turning love into leverage, rewriting the story so she could return to a man who had ignored her until someone else made her feel seen, that says everything about her. And nothing about me. I wasn't weak. I was willing. I wasn't broken. I was brave. Brave enough to open my heart when it would have been easier to keep it locked behind old mistakes. Brave enough to stand still while someone else used my steadiness as a ladder back into their dysfunction. And now? Now I live slower. I speak less. I watch more. But I do not regret loving her. That's the hardest truth. Because love, even when misplaced, is still a reflection of your own character. One day, she'll wake up next to him, and feel the hollowness he never bothered to fill. She'll remember what safety felt like. What gentleness sounded like. And maybe, just maybe, she'll realize what she destroyed in order to feel needed. But I won't be there. I've walked through the fire and didn't come out cleaner, but I came out clearer. And in that clarity, I found something she never gave me, peace that doesn't depend on being understood. She used me to heal her story. But I will use the pain to honor mine. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to help this video reach more viewers. See you in the next one.